Hello, my name is Brendan Hale. We're here to talk about Freestyle drones. Freestyle drones have been a hobby of mine for a couple years now. The first thing that we need to look at is the parts of the drone. So I'll switch over. When I first got into this hobby, this was my very first drone. It's a great beginner one and a great one to learn on. It's much lighter weight than your typical full-size drone and is much more forgiving in a crash with its less power and smaller size. I've since upgraded to this full-size drone, which uses a 5-inch propeller and is much heavier and has more power than my first one. So the very first thing to get into it are the propellers. The propellers come in many different sizes, but they're usually determined by the size of your frame. This one's used for a 5-inch frame. If I put a 6-inch propeller on it, it would not be able to clear. So it can only use 5-inch or below. And that's one of the main two things of propellers. The other one is the pitch or the angle of each blade. So this one here is a pretty shallow pitch, which makes it a lot better on the battery life. If you have a steeper pitch, it's going to grab a lot more air and cause a lot more torque to be put down to the motor, which in turn will use more voltage. So let's start by taking the old propellers here off. Okay, now that we have the propellers off, we need to put them back on. The first thing we need to do is make sure we have the correct orientation. It'll be a curved side right here, so that means it's going to spin this way. This front right motor spins clockwise. Put that one on. Start this. Okay, now we know this other one spins the opposite, so it'll be counterclockwise. Find this guy. See, it's curved the other way, so there's a counterclockwise spinning propeller. Mount that on there. Get this started. Make sure it's fully seated. Perfect. And so the opposite corners are actually the same. So this one's clockwise, clockwise, counterclockwise, counterclockwise. So we know that this one is going to be the same as the one diagonal from it, and that is clockwise. So put this guy on, throw that nut over it. Same thing with this one, verify it's spinning counterclockwise. Put him there, put the nut on it. Now we have all 4 of the propellers on and are ready to fly. This is something you have to do quite often due to the fact that they get damaged very easily. Whether it's a cut or dent in the edge of the blade here, or even if they can get bent up or down, it can make it very difficult for them to fly anymore. Now we have the flight controller. Flight controller is this guy right here on top. Think of it as like the motherboard. It is where it sends and receives signals from and tells the ESC, which is right below it, how much power to give each motor. And the ESC itself sits right below that flight controller and is responsible for powering each one of the motors. And it's also, so this right here is the power lead, and it connects right into the ESC, right in the back right here. So it makes a very short path from the battery to each one of the motors. The camera right here connects to the video transmitter, or VTX for short. Its job is to output the video from the camera to the FPV goggles with as little latency or lag as possible. If this component right here fails, you'll be flying blind and can easily lose your drone. And the antenna, which connects right to the VTX, can also be swapped out easily just by twisting it on and off, and it would allow you to have a greater or shorter range depending on the antenna you have. Most drones, including this one, have 4 motors, but it can vary. Sometimes they have as little as 3. They can even go up to 12 or more. The main thing to look at in a motor is the kV rating. So this one's kind of hard to see, but it has a kV rating of 1750, and that kV rating states how many rotations a minute the motor does per volt that is implied to it. These are not the original motors. The last ones that I had, one of them, I believe it was this back right one, actually started smoking and caught on fire a little bit, so I had to swap them out. And when I did that, I added this LED power strip right here. So whenever there's power that runs through, these actually light up so that the drone is a lot more visible at night or even in darker conditions. The frame has the responsibility of holding everything together. It's the main housing of the whole drone. The main weakness of them are actually the arms right here. So they're very thin to make it as lightweight as possible. This frame right here is made out of carbon fiber, which has the best combination of both durability and the very lightweight. Okay, and the power lead comes from the ESC, runs up, and we connect in the battery right here. The battery sits right there and plugs into it. I soldered on a capacitor right here that would help get rid of any voltage drops in the battery. So kind of help reduce the risk of it falling out of the sky because the battery can't keep up with the discharge rate. The battery sits on top of the quadcopter with a strap and a traction pad right here to help it minimize the risk of it falling off. I did have that happen one time. I didn't have the strap on tied off. It slipped out. It actually cut one of these balance leads, sheared right through it, and made the battery inoperable, so I had to buy a new one. Most drones have either a 4 or 6S battery. This one is a 6S. So the 6S or 4S means how many separate cells. So there's actually 6 separate cells in each of this battery. You can see by the balance leads here, they each go to each one of the cells. And that helps make the discharge rate of each cell adds up to it, so it has the same voltage, but the discharge rate goes faster, making it more powerful and can discharge it to the motors a lot more efficiently. Okay, now that we've gone over the parts of the drone, let's go over actually flying it. So this is how I would transport it. Right here I got my bag of all my tools and all the parts and everything, and I got my drone and my radio in this one right here. So the first thing to do is take the drone out, get that ready, set that down, get our radio out. This is how it looks right in here right now. Got my lanyard to hold it. I got my radio itself right here. Get that ready. Open up this. First thing we need for the drone is a battery. They use LiPo batteries. This is the bag right here that we keep them in. Different kinds in there. So this one right here, we'll use this guy. I can check as well. Make sure it's fully charged. Pull this guy in. Says right there, 79%. That's going to be good for today. Put our battery in. Alright, now when I hook it up without any internet, with any radio signal, it's going to start beeping like that. So the first thing you need to do, turn on our radio.
Switch warning. Armed. High speed mode active. Engine off.
So now that the beeping stopped, we know it's paired. I can turn it on real quick. Verify that it's working. Next step is going to be to get our goggles in set. radio all set up. Right, verify our picture's working. It is. Turn on the GoPro. Right, we are recording. Let's fly around a little.